The sand of the arena burned like judgment beneath his boots. Riven spat the grit from his mouth, tasting iron and bitterness. His arms trembled, his ribs ached, and every breath cut through his lungs like broken glass. But he was still standing. That alone was a miracle. Across from him stood Zevera, champion of the Zarn. She was a vision of war, obsidian-tinted skin rippling with muscle, ceremonial markings glowing faintly against her greenish-purple complexion. The tribal crowd above them thundered with anticipation, eager for blood, eager for tradition to be upheld. She held the judgment spear, an artifact of heritage and execution, carved from ancient petrified wood and tipped in jet-black crystal. And she was going to kill him with it. Except fate blinked. She launched it with terrifying speed, an impossible throw meant to end him. But Riven wasn't just another outsider. He had reflexes trained in the weightless chaos of asteroid arenas. His fingers shot up, battered and bloodied, but precise. The spear met his palm instead of his chest. The moment froze. Silence crashed over the amphitheater like a dropped stone. Zavara's emerald eyes widened. The judgment spear now rested in his grip, not hers. The crowd, once a sea of snarling approval, choked on its own gasp. Then came the murmurs. The law had been invoked. Ancient law. Binding law. The Kavaltha. He didn't know what it meant, not yet, but he knew it was big. He saw it in the way the clan elders rose from their stone thrones. The eldest one spoke with a voice like cracked thunder. He holds the spear. She is his. The law is the law. It is done. No ceremony. No discussion. Consort. Riven felt as if he'd fallen into a pit and landed in someone else's story. The guards didn't touch him like a prisoner anymore. They flanked him like they were afraid of him. As they led him through the carved passageways of the great tree settlement, he caught glances from warriors who had mocked him only hours ago. Those looks now carried confusion. Hesitant respect. Dread. He was brought to the champion's dwelling, a hollow trunk draped in the skins of beasts he couldn't name, their scent sharp with power. Inside, a low fire burned. Weapon racks gleamed in the flickering light. Every corner reeked of purpose, of pride. They left him alone. His body gave out. He collapsed near the fire, muscles uncoiling in waves of agony. His face was still streaked with dust when she walked in. Zevera. She moved with a deliberate fury, every step a declaration of rage barely leashed. Her armor came off piece by piece, each metallic clink echoing like a judgment. She didn't look at him at first. "This is mockery," she said. He didn't argue. He didn't move. His body wouldn't let him, and honestly, he didn't see the point. "You should have died. With honor." "I was too tired to die," he muttered. Her stare could have scorched metal. "You don't understand what you've done. The law, it was never meant to be used like this. Especially not by something like you." He flinched, not from her words, but from the venom in them. Still, he looked her in the eye. "I'm not here to steal your title. Or your pride." "Too late," she snapped. "You are mine now. In name. In shame. You'll stay in the shadows of this place. Eat what I give. Sleep where I say. But you will not touch me. Not speak unless spoken to. You are a scar on my legacy." He nodded, barely. It hurt too much to lift his chin. He saw the way she clutched her side when she turned. Blood, dark and slow, leaked from a reopened wound. A cut from earlier, during the trials. He knew how to treat it. He knew exactly which plants outside this very dwelling could clot that wound in seconds. But he said nothing. He would be the ghost she asked for. For now. Later, another storm entered the room, this one called Kale. Massive, scarred, and radiating barely contained violence. He didn't knock. Just appeared, as if the walls feared him too much to protest. "You are not welcome here," Zevera said, not even looking up from the blade she was sharpening. He ignored her. His black eyes zeroed in on Riven, curled in a nest of furs like a beaten dog. "This was supposed to be my place," he growled. "My mate. My dwelling. And now you fill it with this pink parasite. Say your piece and leave, Kale," she warned. He grinned. "No. I will fix this. I challenge him. Trial of correction. I will end this farce." Zevera stood. The air changed. "You challenge him, you challenge me." Even Kale paused at that. "You can't beat me. Not again." The silence that followed was thick with things unsaid. Kale sneered, fangs flashing, and stormed out, but not before leaving a promise behind, hanging in the air like a blade above Riven's head. "He will try again," Zevera whispered later, staring at the fire. "He won't stop until he kills you." Riven winced, feeling fresh blood soak through his tunic. "I've gathered that." She turned, sharp emerald gaze pinning him. "Show me." He hesitated. Then pulled the fabric aside. Cuts. Bruises. Broken skin. She knelt, examining him not like a lover, but like a soldier evaluating a battlefield. He reached for his medkit, sterile, compact, alien. Her eyes narrowed. "What is that?" "Medicine," he said simply. "This'll sting." He cleaned the wound, then used the dermal pen. The gash slowly knit together under a soft hum and blue light. Zevera stared, stunned. Her hand brushed against his chest by accident. She flinched. He didn't. "That was not Fellini healing," she murmured. "No," he said, gently. "It was human." And in that moment, her kneeling, him bleeding, the flicker of the medkit between them, something changed. Something subtle and permanent. A truce. Not of words. But of wounds. The jungle of Zaros was no place for a scholar, yet Riven moved through it like he belonged. The others didn't think so. They watched him from the shadows, silent and disapproving, as he trudged through damp foliage with nothing but a small blade and a survival pack. He was the anomaly, the off-worlder who had survived the gauntlet and walked away with the champion. Not as a trophy. As her consort. It was Kale's idea, of course. The hunt. The elders, ever obsessed with appearances, agreed. Riven had to prove he wasn't a fluke. So here he was, thick in a ritual hunt for a creature even the Fellini feared, the Growther, a six-legged slab of muscle and bone. Vixara hadn't spoken to him since they left. She stalked the canopy with other warriors, a violet blur of muscle and motion. But her ears twitched every time he stumbled or paused. She was watching him, even when she didn't want to. Riven didn't move like a predator. He moved like a botanist. He saw vines that numbed the skin, spores that corroded bone, and fungi whose secretions slicked stone like oil. While the warriors sought the kill, he observed the forest with awe. It spoke to him in chemical warnings and evolutionary riddles. Kale, of course, pushed too hard. Drove the flank inward instead of circling wide. Riven saw it before it happened. The Growther wasn't being herded. It was being provoked. And it wasn't alone. They erupted from the tree line like a meteor storm, two of them. One massive, one smaller, wilder. The alpha roared, shattering the quiet. A nearby Fellini froze, spear slack in his hand. Riven didn't think. He moved. He dove for the somnavine, crushed the velvety leaves, and stood his ground. When the beast thundered toward him, he waited, then flung the glittering pollen into its multifaceted eyes. The effect was instant. The Growther skidded, limbs spasming. Disoriented. Blind. But the juvenile wasn't stunned. It charged, not at Riven, but at the frozen warrior. Then Zevera moved. She exploded from the shadows like a storm. Twin spears in hand. But she didn't aim for the young beast. She stood between Riven and the Alpha. Her body became a living wall of muscle and death. She didn't shout a warning. She roared. And it wasn't just a warrior's cry. It was a claim. Of him. Of the man who wasn't supposed to matter. Riven felt the moment like a blow. Not just the noise. But what it meant. She was fighting for him. Not for honor. Not for the law. For him. He didn't waste the moment. The younger Growther barreled toward the other warrior. Riven's mind raced. He pulled the synth rope from his pack, tied it to the gnarled root of a massive ironbark tree. Calculating speed, trajectory, pressure points. Physics was his ally. Zevera, he barked. Draw it. She responded instantly, shifting to feint at the disoriented Alpha. The adult lurched in her direction. The juvenile hesitated, long enough. Riven sprinted toward the other warrior. Threw the rope low. The beast hit the line full speed. Its legs tangled. Its body flipped. It hit the earth with a quake-like crash, wind knocked from its lungs. Silence. Kale and his warriors appeared too late. They stared, dumbfounded, at the downed beasts. At Riven. Standing not behind the champion, but beside her. The warrior he'd saved, young, trembling, looked at Riven as if he'd rewritten the laws of the universe. You saved me, he breathed. Riven didn't smile. You were in my way. The warriors didn't laugh. They didn't sneer. They watched him. Differently. Later, back at the dwelling, the air was different. Zevera didn't speak as she shed her armor. She didn't protest when Riven cleaned the long gash on her arm. When his hand touched hers, she didn't pull away. You fought for me, she said, barely above a whisper. You fought for me first, he replied. She stared at him. Really looked. Not the outsider. Not the ghost. Him. He didn't kiss her. She kissed him. Hard. Fierce. Unapologetic. It was a war cry in the shape of a kiss. A clash of claws and fingers, lips and teeth. They found each other in the space between combat and surrender, between obligation and want. The firelight painted their bodies in gold and shadow as they crashed into the firs, not as consort and champion, but as equals. Later, tangled in breath and sweat, she pressed her forehead to his. You were supposed to be a burden, she whispered. He smiled. I'm full of surprises. The next morning, the ripple of their union spread like a stone dropped in water. And Kale, whatever power he thought he held. He saw it slipping away. And rage has a short fuse. Section 3. The challenge came the way thunder comes before a storm, loud, inevitable, and impossible to ignore. Kale slammed the butt of his war spear into the stone floor of the great hall, his voice a primal roar. I invoke the right of challenge. All conversation died. Even breath held still. Riven stood beside Zevera at the long ceremonial table, her hand resting on his thigh under the table, claws lightly dug into his skin. Warning. Pleading. I challenge the off-worlder, the false consort. Kale shouted, black eyes locked on Riven. For the title of champion consort. For the right to Zevera. Zevera rose so fast her chair tipped and crashed behind her. You dare. He cut her off with a snarl. The Cavaltha was perverted by a trick. He is no warrior. He did not fight. He caught. A toy play from a weak species. The elders stirred, whispering behind their hands. The oldest of them stood, robes trailing like roots across the stone. The law was invoked. It is done. Kale pointed directly at Riven. Then let the law be tested. Let us see if the bond survives battle. Let me prove what he is not. All eyes turned to Riven. Zavara's claws dug deeper into his leg. Don't, she hissed through clenched teeth. This is not ritual. It's a death match. There are no rules. He will tear you apart. Riven stared across the hall at Kale, massive, scarred, a living weapon. This wasn't a fight. It was an execution waiting for a nod. He placed his hand gently over Zavara's, stilling her trembling fingers. I accept. The room gasped. Kale smiled, slow and cruel. The rite will be held at dawn, the elder said solemnly. Let the ancestors judge. That night, the fire in their dwelling burned low, but Zavara burned hot. She paced like a caged predator, fury steaming off her in waves. You idiot, she snapped. You soft-skinned, stubborn, brilliant idiot. I'm flattered, Riven murmured, seated cross-legged beside the hearth. He wasn't sharpening a blade. He was scanning his datapad. Her voice went cold. He will crush you. There are no tricks this time. No vines. No terrain. No time to plan. Riven looked up, eyes steady. Then I'd better make time. He closed the pad and stood, reaching for his belt pouches. I'm not going to fight like a Fellini. I'm going to fight like me. She narrowed her eyes. What does that mean? It means I'm not trying to win a duel. I'm trying to control a battlefield. He moved like a scientist in a lab, not frantic, not panicked, but methodical. He gathered somnivine pollen, Gisando sap, bioluminescent moss, and a dozen other biological oddities. He mixed powders, sealed clay spheres, tested reactions. His boots were coated in traction resin. His knife was small, unremarkable. But it was his. Zavara watched, torn between horror and awe. This is not war. This is strategy. He smiled without humor. It's war. Just smarter. Before dawn, they stood together in the empty arena. Riven mapped the terrain, testing dust patches, knocking on porous stone. He wasn't hunting a warrior. He was laying a trap for a force of nature. This is madness, she whispered. No, he said. This is balance. She wanted to believe him. And when he kissed her hand before walking away, she realized she already did. The arena was packed. Kale stood bare-chested, covered in ceremonial scars, his war spear a glinting extension of his fury. Riven stood across from him, smaller, less threatening, armed only with a short knife and pouches. The crowd murmured. Many were here to watch the human die. The elder raised his staff. Begin. Kale charged. Riven didn't meet him. He pivoted, a fluid dodge, and dropped the first clay sphere. It burst with a quiet pop, releasing the Gisando sap. Kale turned to follow, and slipped. The entire arena gasped as the massive warrior crashed to the ground, fury splintering into confusion. He scrambled up, snarling. Rushed again. Riven tossed a pouch into the air, bright, blinding moss erupted in a flare of white-blue light. Kale roared, blinded. Swung wildly. Riven moved again. Quiet. Efficient. Always circling. Always leading Kale where he wanted him. This wasn't a duel. It was an autopsy. Kale grew tired. His movements slowed. His skin glistened with sweat. His breaths became ragged. Another trip. Another flare. Another slick patch. Another evasion. And still, Riven never struck. He was showing them all something they'd never seen, domination without brutality. Victory by intellect. Finally, Kale snapped. He threw his spear in desperation. It missed, embedded into the stone wall, quivering. Disarmed, he pulled a long blade and charged one last time. Riven didn't run. He stepped into the attack. At the last second, he dropped low, grabbed Kale's wrist and pivoted. Kale flipped. Slammed onto his back. The air left his lungs in a gasp. Riven was on him in a second, knee on chest, knife at throat. Silence. It was done. But Riven didn't kill. He looked at Zevera, then the crowd, then snapped his own blade in half. The clan has lost too many warriors to this world, he said. It will not lose another to pride. It was heresy. It was brilliance. Kale, humiliated and defeated, bowed his head. Submission. Riven stepped back. The crowd exploded, not in anger, but awe. Zevera walked into the ring. Touched his cheek. You bled, she whispered. So did you, he whispered back. She pressed her forehead to his. The arena vanished around them. He had fought for her. And now, she was his not by law. But by choice. The seasons turned like pages in a story no one expected to be told. The village, once wary, once snarling at Riven's presence, now moved with a different rhythm. Quiet respect. Cautious curiosity. The warrior consort of Zevera, once mocked as a fluke, now walked among them not as an outsider but as something else entirely. A symbol. Not of strength. Of change. He hadn't tried to become one of them. That would have failed. Instead, he became something adjacent. He used what he knew, what his people had mastered over millennia. He mapped their lands with a botanist's eye, noting seasonal shifts in flora, advising which crops to rotate. The harvests improved. Disease outbreaks dwindled as he identified herbs with antiseptic properties, concocting salves that cured rather than scarred. He never claimed credit. But they remembered. The clan healer, once skeptical, now begrudgingly handed him leaves to test. Warriors stopped him mid-path to ask if a certain root could numb pain faster. They didn't bow, but they began to listen. And always, at his side, was Zevera. She no longer kept distance. They sparred together. Hunted together. Slept with limbs tangled under firelight. She had once called him a ghost. Now she called him mate with a possessive pride that curled her lips whenever others looked too long in his direction. And Kale? The defeated giant now led patrols along the wild edges of the territory. He had not spoken against Riven since the duel. His silence wasn't shame, it was respect. Earned. Honest. In their private moments, Riven and Zevera explored not just each other but the edges of two worlds colliding. She told him stories of her ancestors, of sky-fire wars and bone-oath battles. He told her of Earth, of cities that scraped the clouds, of a place where honor wasn't written in blood but in resilience. Their bodies told other stories at night. Ones full of discovery, of trust earned in sweat and breath. The way she purred when his fingers brushed the base of her ear. The way he shuddered at her claws, drawing soft maps across his back. They fought like rivals. They loved like survivors. One evening, as the moon bathed the great forest in silver, they stood atop the lookout ledge, arms wrapped around one another, breath sinking with the rustle of leaves. Zevera leaned into him, her weight familiar, grounding. Kale is changed. He's a good warrior, Riven said. Just had a bad idea of what strength looked like. She smiled, her cheek resting on his chest. You're still full of strange ideas. Give it time, he murmured. I've got plenty more. She shifted slightly, pulling his hand down to her waist, lower. He felt it then. A soft curve. Subtle. New. His breath caught. Is that? She nodded slowly, her green skin glowing faintly in the moonlight. Her eyes, usually sharp as flint, shimmered with something unguarded. Your strange ideas, she said, voice low and reverent, have taken root. He stared at her, then down to where his hand rested. A life. Between them. Not just proof of what they'd overcome. Proof of what they were building. He wrapped his arms around her, holding her as if the universe might try to snatch her away again. She let out a soft rumble from deep in her chest, a sound only he got to hear now. A vibration of home. Below them, the village moved in flickers of torchlight and murmured stories. The law had made them mates. But everything since had made them more. Partners. Lovers. Parents of a child who would walk between stars and soil. In the firelit dark, Riven whispered a promise he didn't need to swear out loud. That he would protect this new life. That he would teach their child that strength came in many shapes, some with claws, some with knowledge, all forged in love. They stood there until the moon dipped low. Until breath slowed. Until words ran out. The stars above them didn't blink. They just watched. And approved. And that, my friends, is the story of how an off-world botanist reshaped a warrior clan, not with brute force, but with strategy, compassion, and a whole lot of science. From being thrown into an arena to standing beside the fiercest champion in the galaxy, Riven didn't just survive. He changed the definition of what it means to be strong. It's easy to assume power always looks like a spear or a roar. But maybe, sometimes, it looks like a quiet human standing his ground with nothing but a plan and a pouch of glowing moss. He didn't just win a mate, he earned a family, a place in a world that was never meant for him. He proved that even on a planet of predators, there's room for those who think, adapt, and care. Their child, born of two worlds, is a symbol of unity. A fusion of wild strength and measured wisdom. And I don't know about you, but I'd love to see that sequel. If this story made you cheer, gasp, or maybe even tear up just a little, go ahead and hit that like button. Subscribe for more interstellar adventures, unexpected love stories, and alien politics that hit harder than most reality shows. And hey, share this with a friend who thinks intelligence can't win battles. Prove them wrong. Until next time, stay curious. Stay bold. And always pack a medkit, you never know when love might ambush you on a jungle planet.